When is it time to rebrand? It's often an expensive and time-consuming process. So you don't want to undertake it lightly, right? You don't want to be like, oh, well, I'm bored. So let's rebrand, or I'm tired of saying this thing over and over. So maybe let's switch it up, right? You want to make sure that you're rebranding for a very good reason. I had a problem last year and beginning of this year where business was really slow. And as a marketer, that's one of the first things I look at is, well, how's my brand looking? And I took a look and the messaging was kind of all over the place. I was publishing consistently, but the messaging I was putting out was not consistent. So that was when I realized, okay, I need to pull back and refocus and really figure out what it is that sets me apart and what do I want to focus on, whom do I want to serve, and how am I going to communicate that to the world going forward on an ongoing basis. So if you're thinking it might be time for a rebrand, but you're not sure, maybe something else is going on, let's talk about some of the things that might be going on. So, big one is you're targeting a new demographic. I get this a lot with clients who are like, I'm serving this clientele, it's going really well. I want to grow, I want to take it to the next level. That means I need to target this group of people. And sometimes it's people who are very similar to the people you're already serving. Maybe they're just making more money, or they're in a different geographic location, or they're in a little bit of a different industry. That can be an easier shift and it can kind of happen naturally, especially depending on how good you are at just working your network. But if they're in a completely different industry, or if you're launching a new product or service and you want to communicate that to the world and you're trying to get that out in the world and market it and let people know that you're doing this, that's when it can get tricky because you're not sure suddenly where those people are, what they really want, what this problem is that you're solving for them, how to talk about it. That's so also something that I'm struggling with as I try to get into a new market and provide. It's a new market and it's a little bit of a different service. So I am trying to figure out how to get in front of those people and how to talk about it because how I talk about this problem is not how they talk about this problem. So I am still in the process of doing some market research there to figure out what I need to do there to market this to get it in front of the right people. So that's when it could be time for a rebrand, is if you're really getting in front of a new audience or you're trying to get in front of a new audience. Similar to that is you've hit a major milestone, and this could be anything from an IPO to an ownership transition, merger or acquisition. Each of those calls for a rebrand. The IPO, for example, not only are you trying to get in front of new clients, new customers, you're also trying to convince investors that you're ready to play with the big kids, right? If you're still using a logo that you made on Canva, that's not really communicating, I'm ready to work with the big kids. That's I'm still in grade school and yeah, it does not look good. So it's not going to convince those investors. Other things, like I said, if you're launching a new where was I? Yeah, growing. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about. If you're growing, so growth can be a major milestone, especially if you just hit a new revenue goal or you added a new person to your team. That's always really exciting and kind of anxiety inducing, right? Is adding a new person to your team because you're growing, but now you also have other issues that you need to deal with. That also might require a rebrand because normally when I work with solopreneurs and small business owners, it's the founder that I'm working with. And that means that up to a certain point, they are the brand because they were the one doing all of the things, right? I am my brand because I'm the one doing all of the things. But as you grow and you start outsourcing some of your work and adding people to your team, that means you need to be cognizant of how those people are talking to your clients, how those people are talking to each other, how they're thinking about your company, how they're thinking about your brand. That means you need to be really intentional about how you're defining your brand and how you're communicating it, not just externally, but internally. You need to communicate that internally so that everyone who's on board can communicate it externally, so that everyone who encounters your brand online, via email, in person, they're all having the same experience with your brand, so they all know what to expect. Which is my next point. If you realize that your message is inconsistent, like I said, I was looking at my messaging last year and went, "Oh yeah, this is kind of all over the place. We gotta rein this in." That's a big one. Is if you people encounter one thing on your website and your social media sounds like a different company, and your email sounds like a third company altogether, they don't know what to expect. People don't like knowing what to expect. It does not make them feel safe. And it's not that they think you're going to attack them or anything. It's just how our lizard brains work. Something is familiar, then it hasn't hurt us, and we like it. We're safe. All right, this is good. If we don't know what to expect, it could potentially be dangerous. Not to say that you're threatening your clients, but again, that's how our lizard brains work. We don't know what to expect anymore. Suddenly I feel on edge. And if they're on edge, they're not going to buy. So you have to make them feel comfortable, make them feel like they are in good hands. And the best way to do that is consistency in your messaging. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but that consistency does a lot of the heavy lifting. And it's one of those like sneaky things that does a lot of work that people don't even realize what it's doing and how important it is in communicating with your audience. Next up, you recognize your competition has leveled up. This is not to say you need to sound like your competition, but there is a fine line between meeting industry expectations so that you look and sound like someone in this industry without just being more white noise and sounding like everyone else, and suddenly there's nothing that sets you apart. You have to find what sets you apart within that certain niche, right? It's kind of like deciding whether you want pie or cake, right? There's a big difference between pie and cake. You're going to be expecting different things if you want pie or if you want cake. Then if you decide you want pie, then you can decide, do you want fruity pie? Do you want a custard pie? Do you want a savory pie? And then once you've narrowed that down, then you decide, what kind of fruit pie, what kind of savory pie you want. Can you tell I'm hungry? So you have to level up if your competition has leveled up. And again, if you're still using that Canva logo, then it looks like you're playing t-ball while everyone else is getting ready for the big leagues. So that is when it's time for a rebrand. Sales are down. Like I said, when my sales went down last year, I looked at my brand because that's just my go-to as well. What's your brand look like? To be clear, sales can be down for a lot of reasons. I get it. Sometimes the market is weird. That also happened last year. The market was weird. People didn't know what to do. People were hesitant to buy. I get it. So that was part of it. But at the same time, I'm always thinking about what can I do to make people more comfortable and more assured that, yes, they can work with me. And yes, I can handle this for them. So sometimes it's just the market. Sometimes things are being weird. Sometimes it is a sales problem. Maybe you do need to look at what sales is doing or what leadership is doing. Sometimes you got to look at your brand. So if I tend to look at your brand if you're getting one of a few things. If you're getting fewer leads, it's because marketing isn't bringing in those leads, and that means something is off. So you're going to want to reassess your message and where you're marketing. Sometimes even if you're doing the same thing you've always been doing, it just stops working because the market shifts. Maybe your audience shifts. Maybe they get pissed off at a platform and they decide to move to a different social media platform. Who knows, right? But you gotta have your finger on the pulse and be aware of what's going on there. So maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just people have shifted and you haven't quite shifted with them yet. Other times you're still getting leads. They're just not good leads, right? You either have to work harder to close that deal, or it's just like, no, this person is looking for something completely different from what we provide. And it's a sales call doomed to go nowhere, right? We all hate those sales calls. So that means people don't really know what they're getting. They're hopping on a call with you without first really understanding the value you provide, what it is you do, whom you serve. That means your messaging needs to be adjusted to take all of that into account and to communicate all of that so people can self-select and go, no, this isn't for me because I don't fit that demographic. Or no, I shouldn't recommend them to these people because it would not be a good fit. And then the other thing I look for is sales has gotten harder. When marketing and sales are aligned, it's a beautiful thing, and marketing does a lot of the heavy lifting for sales. I have experienced this myself where I literally was on a sales call with someone who upsold herself. And while she did, she quoted something from one of my own blog posts. And I was like, oh, look at that. That worked. Easiest sales call I've ever had, right? So it should be really easy when they're working together. When they're not working together, when they're misaligned, sales has to work a lot harder. They spend more time on calls. They have to do more calls and more meetings with each prospect to try and earn their trust, to try to educate them and nurture them and explain to them, yes, we're experts. Yes, we're professionals. Yes, we can help you with this. Please trust us, as opposed to, when the messaging is on point It does that for you before sales ever gets on the phone with them. So if sales is working harder to get less money in the door, I would definitely look at your messaging and your brand. Last but certainly not least, you're embarrassed to share your own stuff. I encountered this recently with someone who wants me to rewrite his bio because someone, in introducing him, went to his bio and talked him up using that. And he was like, "Oh, is that what I sound like? Is that what's on my website? Yeah, no, we got to update that." So if you find yourself telling people, "Don't go to my website," that's a problem because people are naturally going to go straight to your website. Someone you met in person at a networking event, they're going to go to your website to check you out. Someone who sees you at a speaking event, someone who gets referred to you by a mutual connection, they're going to go straight to your website. That's always the first thing they're going to do. So make sure your website is prepared for that traffic. If instead you're saying, don't go to my website, go to my LinkedIn instead, well, are you saying that to everyone, or what happens to those people who are finding their way to your website without you saying, without you redirecting them to your favorite social media channel, right? So if you find yourself kind of hiding instead of sharing your website, sharing your business card, that's a sign that it's time for a rebrand. So if any of these ring true to you, if any of these sound like, yeah, I need to talk to Allison, then please reach out. You can get more information like this here on YouTube. Also, so like and subscribe if you have not already. Also over on my LinkedIn, I think I'm the only Allison Verhalen over there, so check me out over there. And my website, AV as in my initials, Allison Verhalen, that is avwritingservices.com. And you can reach me directly at info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Have a great weekend. Happy branding, everyone.